Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Good morning, America. Welcome to USAPrepares.com. And this is Rich Scheben out of the Northern Rockies in Montana, sitting in for Vincent Finelli today. And I want to thank Jason and or Nate for engineering the show in Minnesota. And Vince told me that he'll be back tomorrow. Hour one will be with Gwyneth and Kathy, and hour two he'll be discussing, I believe, with Bert, home wiring installation and the engineering that revolves around that. So expect to hear Vincent tomorrow. And what I'm going to do today, in fact, before I even start, I just want to, for us, less than 1%ers out there, which is a totally different context of when you hear that, which I am one of, meeting off-grid. 4 more days, people. 4 more days. And the days start getting longer for the summer. Isn't that a great way to start this broadcast? So next time you hear me, the days will be getting longer for the summer. And when you live off-grid, that's quite significant. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start with an analogy. I want you to stick with me for a moment because you're going to be wondering where I'm going because you've been hearing me talk for the last month and a half about tying in the COVID-19 deadly pandemic. I use that term in quotes with sarcasm. Of course, we have a 99.7% recovery rate with that. And tying in the agenda to voter/election fraud. But before I do that and go there, I just want you to think of the word processed. We have talked about on this show, myself, Vince, especially Dr. Norm Shealy, we've talked about processed foods, whether they be meat, whether it be produce. We've talked about it in a lot of detail. We've talked about the nanotechnology in food. Basically, processed, you think of food out, increased shelf life for the benefit of more money to the manufacturer. You think of the food can be cut in the field and lay longer because of all the changes in the molecular structure. You think of the Monsantos of the world eliminating heirloom seeds, or trying to, getting very close to, and creating their own seeds for their own purpose of power, money, control, and making people sicker, which benefits the big farmers of the world and reduces population. So when you think of process, you think of putting in or taking out. Let's talk a little bit about meat, okay? Remember when Taco Bell and Burger King got caught with some horse meat years ago? You remember all the reports of red dye in your meat, or meat, non-meat, I should say, growing in laboratory? Well, now they're also growing in bioreactors. How many people talk about gluten and all the many proteins that have been damaged and turned into hybrids, not for the benefit of nutrition, for the people? Think about the steroids, hormones, and antibiotics in today's meat, the GMOs, the estrogen mimickers, pesticide-fed cattle, cloning livestock, modified proteins and enzymes in a lot of our foods, which affects our the bioavailability of the foods, the absorption of nutrients, the excretion, the metabolism, and basically the overall homeostasis in our bodies from processed food. You know, processed could mean a little thing like coffee. Okay, when you ask for decaf coffee, that's being processed. It means the molecular structure is being changed, which means there's chemicals or other things changing it. Now, I want you to think of today's voting process. I want you to think of COVID 1984. And I know this audience knows why we all say 1984 today, because it's Orwellian, the agenda. Now, I want you to think of wrapping the word processed from food and correlating that analogy to voting and the COVID agenda. What words do you think of? Contaminated, tainted, poison, rigged, selling the narrative, pushing the agenda, compromising nutritional value, cover-up. See? See what's going on here, folks? It's not rocket science. It's basically an authoritarian, tyrannical, very few wealthy people at the very top creating a communist insurrection to control thought, control health, control commerce, control it all. Power, money, and control. It is an addiction. So just talking about, of course, as usual, I'm going to mention a lot of articles. I discuss things that are published in the public domain and correlate it with what's happening politically, what's happening agenda-wise, and how they're pulling the wool over the people's eyes. Now, there's a lot more information coming out daily, almost hourly, of all the election/voter fraud. And things are getting a little serious right now with a lot of people calling for certain things. And some I agree with and some I don't. And if the ones I don't agree with, I want to hear about the terms before I sign on to them. And we'll talk about some of that. But one thing we cannot do, because the legitimacy of America is at stake. And one thing we cannot do is certify the elections in any state if we don't audit all legal votes. Whether it be a microfiche or some type of electronically kept record, all ballots need to be showed. We need to have signature verification for everything. And I believe after January 1st, they're public record. And they have to be legally on public record for 2 years. So the images are there. If the images, the evidence has been shredded, has been eliminated, has been stolen, that is, excuse me, an admission of guilt of election fraud. And at that point, the election needs to be deemed null and void. I mean, there's so much evidence of fake counterfeit ballots coming from China and Mexico. Ballots shown up being already filled out, numbers not matching, different ink. We need a full audit, people. We need a full audit of the machines, of the ballots, of the signatures, regarding legal votes only. I mean, how many of these have we talked about? Underage votes, P.O. boxes, out of state, I mean, internet connected, eliminating security standards, hiding forensic trails. I mean, we have a national security collapse. We have all this evidence of math algorithms being discovered as evidence, but yet the powers that be are saying, well, where's the evidence? And they create the agenda behind the COVID-19. And, you know, if you let these elite people, these big corporations, the big corporate oligarchies, the politicians, the lawyers, judges, courts, corrupt government, all the people who are bought and paid for in blackmail, if we allow them to break a law under the quote, here we go with the air quotes here, the pandemic, and they sell it as an emergency when the recovery rate is 99.7%, that means they will always create an emergency. Remember, the Democrats' famous saying, no crisis goes to waste. So they're always going to create emergencies in order to bypass, to break up, to make up laws. We have to be aware of all this. All ballots need to be showed to the public. I don't consider at this point in time, I never really have, I don't consider anybody to be competition. I really don't. I really feel that we're in dire straits right now. Our country is ready to go down. There's so much corruption at every level, especially government institutions and big corporate oligarchies. I mentioned on Thanksgiving Day that I was thankful for certain websites, certain alternative media sites who have the guts to tell the truth. And you've heard me say many times that I feel that patriotism, intelligence, and courage at a high level is absolutely necessary right now. So I'm going to mention what some of you might be considering as competition, which I don't. I consider us to all be American patriots trying to tell the truth. And right now I'm going to tell you who's doing a really good job. OAN, One American News, I believe is their title. Steve Bannon on the War Room. If you want to listen to him, go to CFP, which is citizenfreepress.com. He's doing 2 shows a day. He's been doing 2 shows a day, him and his crew, for a long time. And he's concentrating 95% on election fraud as well as we should. And this is why I've been doing election fraud and COVID and tying in the agenda for the listeners for the last month and a half post-election. Even pre-election I was talking about this because we all knew that this election was going to be stolen. We all knew about the fraud ahead of time. And even President Trump did. We all did. We all warned about it. But when you have a corrupt government and people are willing to be bought and paid for and blackmailed at the highest level, you kind of have your hands tied a little bit. So it's up to the people to make the difference. So besides Steve Bannon's War Room, he does a really good job, him and his staff. He has a great, well-read, well-researched, intelligent staff there. Go to citizenfreepress.com. And what's nice about his show is that you can go through the commercials to get to the meat and potatoes of his show. I'm not saying not to listen to his commercials, but I'm just saying you have the ability to do that if you're in a hurry. There's some really good information out there on Zero Hedge, on Breitbart, InfoWars with Alex Jones, really good, Newsmax, The Gateway Pundit. Check them all out, folks. They're all doing a great job. Welcome back, folks. Happy Thursday to everybody. And again, we're 4 days from the days getting longer for the summer, which, again, is important to us off-grid folks. So I'm going to go into articles, bullet points. I read articles. I glean the bullet points. I listen to interviews, and I glean those bullet points. And I try to mention as many as I possibly can in a very short 2-hour show so people can see that we are really not, or no longer, here in America, the land of the free and the home of the brave, especially if they install a false, phony president who didn't even come close to winning. So here we go with news and information regarding this, and then I'm going to talk more about the agenda of the deadly pandemic, and that was in quotes again, with sarcasm, and try to connect as many dots for the people so you can pass this on to other people and read and research and verify. One thing that Vince and I and everybody on this show always says, don't believe a word we say. Please check. Please verify. Please read and research for yourself. Please shut off the TV. Please go to alternative media, like some of these sites that I mentioned a few moments ago before the break. These sites are doing a great job. There's a lot of good channels out there that you don't have to go to the bought and paid for media that have signed up for theater, propaganda, hoaxes, false flags, and lies, and that's especially true for gaslighting and the subsets under each and every one of those categories as well, which we've talked about. So here we go. Joe Biden holds a parking lot rally for Ossoff and Warnock at empty warehouse. I believe I saw the photos, people. I think this warehouse was used in some movie called The Hunter Games. I don't know what the heck that is, but anyway, there was like nobody there. It was basically empty. It's really pathetic that when you think of nobody showing up to his rallies, nobody showing up to his talks, nobody showing up to anything, but yet he got over 80 million votes. People, let's just do a little math here. I mean, we're getting to the point where we're beyond the ridiculous. A lot of these terms are being used: anomalies, irregularities, improbabilities. The term that's more appropriate in 95% of the cases is impossibilities. For example, Barack Obama got 69 million votes and won 873 counties. And we're to believe that Joe Biden received 80 million plus votes and won only 477 counties. People. I know we are not this stupid. I know we're not, because I have conversations with people every day. I read and research every day. It's a few people who are funded by the extreme wealthy, who are committed treason, sedition, espionage, and racketeering against the people, against we, the people. Next, Michigan lawmakers issue subpoenas for Detroit ballot equipment and hard drives. Here we are a month and a half after the election, and what really bothers me, folks, is the fact that these so-called powers that be could have switched machines, could have swiped machines, could have taken, who knows what they could have done. And here we're an hour and a half after, or a month and a half after, pardon me, and we're supposed to believe that there's legitimacy behind all this after I remember Sidney Powell was subpoenaing, she was trying to subpoena a machine or something, and the powers that be stole it. They came in and they said, we need to do something with the software. And they just took it and never returned it. And I believe there's a lot of things going on in Georgia as well regarding subpoenas, and we'll talk a little bit about that after the... Welcome back to USAPrepares.com, everybody. Rich Scheben sitting in for Vincent Finelli here in northwest Montana. And we appreciate everybody who's listening, not just Americans, but we know there's a lot of people around the world listening to this show and listening to a lot of credible, newsworthy shows in a time of turmoil where communist insurrection, freedom, liberty, and justice is all at risk. Now, I want you to, before I go back to more articles and news and information, I want you to think about it. Let's say any one of us Let's say I was a counterfeiter. Okay, I was counterfeiting phony dollar bills, $100 bills, doesn't matter, in my home. And I got caught, but I wasn't subpoenaed or under-reviewed or my machines confiscated or hard drives taken or any equipment looked at for a month and a half. And you saw a shredder truck showing up at my home. Let's say I had unlimited funds to bribe and blackmail everybody around me. You think I would have time to get rid of the evidence? Heck yeah. Heck yeah. Come on, people. We're being used. They think we are idiots. And while they're saying we're idiots, they're saying that you don't have the ability to exercise your American rights, your birthright. They're saying that you no longer matter. Your vote no longer matters. Think about that. So, let me go back to more news and information. Next article, poll watchers can't see much at Georgia's signature audit. The signature audit, just like recounts, are frauds, folks. Frauds. I saw the photos. There are people literally doing the so-called signature matching so far away from the people who are viewing, there's no authenticity, no credibility. There's no transparency. There's no nothing. You know, in Georgia, since I just mentioned this, what's happening there with poll watchers, Georgia's drop boxes, and this is a Georgia statute from what I've been looking at here, it's not been authorized legally by the General Assembly. Okay, this is illegal. See, even the word legal today is being redefined. So there's 600,000 approximate absentee ballots there. 400,000 of them are illegal. And this guy Raffensperger, apparently they passed in Georgia emergency legislation for drop boxes, then illegally filed an amendment. Illegally. Am I saying the word illegally often? Yes. So when certain legislation is not done through legal challenges and you create new rules that passes on July 1st, only good for 120 days, which expires a few days before the November 3rd election, this is why we have subpoenas flying around everywhere, folks. The problem is our lawyers, judges, and courts have been bought and paid for, or they're blackmailed. It's up to the state legislatures to do your job. You have to realize that you have the legal power to change things and be heroes for America. Now, the president has, I've been hearing a lot about the Insurrection Act and martial law and all this stuff, and we're getting to the point where, boy, it's tough to talk about, but we're getting to the point that where America is now so corrupt, not just at the corporate oligarchy levels, but in government, so corrupt, so bought and paid for. When you have people only caring about the manufacturing of your own self-importance and self-preservation, and nobody's practicing what they preach, it's really hard not to have the president invoke the Insurrection Act. There's so much voter fraud and evidence, including foreign interference, servers in Germany, ballots, fake ballots coming from China. Now, it's probably going to be a partial martial law. We have to always do our reading and research, just like Roe versus Wade. Well, if they get rid of, they're going to get rid of women's rights. If they no, they're not. Every state's going to be. It's going to go down to the states. Okay, that's what happens. We have to do our reading and research. We have to. When someone gets arrested, we have to find out, were they on drugs? Did they resist arrest? We have to get the facts. See, what we're doing in this country is we're letting the mainstream media push our buttons with subjective, emotional opinion. Unless we do our homework and read and research and think for ourselves, things aren't going to get better. And we're going to lose more freedoms, more liberties, the rule of law, justice. It's all going to be gone. It's like spitting in the face of over 1 million combat soldiers who gave their life for our freedoms, for our country. That's what we're doing. So anyway, this 2018 executive order, which I've probably spent a couple hours on over the past few weeks here and there, where they bring in the military and do a full forensic check, software, ballots, machines, the whole works. Or at the very least, they create a paper ballot, citizen-verified new election. And then we can end it right there. That's what needs to happen. We're at the point, and you say, well, are the powers that be going to agree? I don't know. And let me give you 2 examples where it's very confusing, because when people at the top care about their self-preservation, they're traitors and they're cowards. And that's what President Trump is surrounded by. So here, Catherine Herridge reports DNI, John Ratcliffe, confirmed there was foreign election interference by China, Iran, etc. And here's another article. They're screwing Trump again. DNI notified by career intelligence officers that they will not meet December 18th regarding foreign threats. So it's really hard, folks, I think big government is so corrupt. I don't think there's a chance. I think America is now illegitimate. And I don't know where things are going to go from here, but it's up to the people to make the difference. Whether we construct grand juries, whether we have our own hearings. I think today's lawyers, judges, and courts are so bought and paid for, so corrupt, only caring about their own self-interest and their own pocketbooks, that I don't think our present system, if we install a new president who didn't even come close to winning by mathematic impossibilities, not improbabilities, not irregularities, not glitches, but impossibilities, where over half the country doesn't even believe it was close. I mean, we can't use the term "come on, man" and expect things to change. I mean, "come on, man" is like, that's the new excuse behavior for the Democrats for saying no evidence. I mean, we have state voting stops dead, just stops in its tracks. You can see it on television, on videos. You can see President Trump's totals decreasing. How does a total decrease on a vote count? And at the same time, Biden is increasing. How does that happen? How does that math work? Oh, it's not an impossibility. It's a glitch. Oh, Rich, that's Russian disinformation. How about bypassing state legislatures in some of these states to change state laws? It's illegal. No transparency for anything and censoring everything, especially evidence and facts. Videos of mail-in ballots showing up in suitcases Ballots getting shipped from New York to Pennsylvania and the trailer becomes missing. USB sticks on video. Kicking out GOP poll watchers on video. Covering wall or windows on video. Thousands of witnesses and affidavits. Dead people, same name, non-existent addresses, commercial, vacant addresses. I can't think of a scenario that didn't happen, and all of them are in favor of Joe Biden. Come on, people. I mean, and there's a good documentary on this, by the way. I saw part of it. Didn't have time to see all of it. On the Epic Times pulled it out. It's about an hour-and-a-half documentary on the 2020 election fraud. It includes a lot of facts, statistics, anomalies, all this stuff. I mean, there's so much information. How can 200,000 ballots that should be discarded in Wisconsin of people who didn't vote properly and legally just showed up? Mail-in ballots, hundreds of thousands, with no creases, no envelopes. People, there's so much evidence. That's all I've been doing for the past month and a half. And even before, how they set this up, given evidence. Okay, I'm looking at the time here, and I'm going to have to, again, go back to shortcutting my shortcuts because I have so much information. Next, Pennsylvania Republicans ask Supreme Court to again review election lawsuit. Next, Ken Starr, Pennsylvania, quote, flagrantly violated laws ahead of presidential election. People, this election at the very least, should be null and void, if not a new election. It's a joke. And Dominion, all this about Dominion and how they used this version of SolarWinds that was hacked. It wasn't just hacked. This software has a backdoor access and breached government agencies. Anyone could access this server, and I think the password was SolarWinds123. We're beyond fraud into stupid and desperate, folks. I'll be right back after this break. Welcome back, everybody. Rich Scheben sitting in for Vincent Finelli. I'm looking at the clock and I'm looking at my material, and I've got to start shortcutting my shortcuts again. Next article. Owners of SolarWinds have links to Obama, the Clintons, China, Hong Kong, and the U.S. election process. People, if this was done 30 years after World War II, all these people would be hung for high treason, sedition, espionage, racketeering. It would all be over for them. But see, the big money has bribed and blackmailed so many people that there's no legitimacy left in anything. Next, Mark Elias, Democrat lawyer behind the Russia dossier. You remember that, folks. The hundreds of millions of dollars that you paid in your money, taxpayer money, inflation money, to create this theater to basically do one of 5 coups against President Trump for this fake Russia hoax and the fake P dossier paid for by Hillary Clinton and the DNC. You remember that, right? Well, involved in over 7 lawsuits in the Georgia Senate runoff. People, we're so corrupt. 90% of government needs to go. They need to be fired right off the bat. If we get a phony president in here and government keeps the same size, America's over. Freedom, liberty, justice is over. Everything is delegitimized, from definitions to work, to the lawyers, to the courts, to the judges. Nothing will be real. It'll be all fake, phony theater. Every bit of it. 100%. And they're using useful idiots to protect their brainwashed groups and their hyphens and their pronouns, while they are literally creating legislation to enable and protect the most corrupt companies with liability immunity while more wealth inequality happens, money being taken from the little guy to the top 1% to 2%, while the same idiots are demanding no protection rights and restitution under the rule of law for the people who've been affected and targeted. And this is what happens, folks. I've discussed this for 10 years on the air. When you demand to lower the bars of standards and expectations for any reason, for any job, for any group, and you eliminate hard work, effort, proven results, and qualifications, you're not only doubting your value, you are rewarding America with mediocrity, and you're destroying the country because you eliminate the rule of law, you exchange the rule of law with precedence, which gives free lunch to the elite, and they're giving us back divide and conquer strategies so everybody hates each other. You're deceived by a political correctness of deception. We are allowing the lieutenants in big corporate oligarchies and especially big government to be sold out to the highest bidder. And the only beneficiaries of this is those elite and China. That's it. Next, new lawsuit will be filed today against Mark Zuckerberg and the dark money that he's enabled fraud in key states. This is proven, folks. If you or I did what Mark Zuckerberg did, or what Twitter did, or what Google did, we would be in prison for the rest of our lives. We'd be Epsteined. Next, signature matches for absentee ballots in Georgia do not even match. And this is with people sitting behind a barrier, a corral, way off in the distance compared to these so-called signature matches, which is a theater fraud. This is all fraud. If the Supreme Court doesn't wake up and null and void this election, I think their days of being in power, I think their jobs are going to be very limited. Next, Dominion audit contains bad news. Ballot error rate was at least 85,000 times higher than the FEC allows. People, the rule of law means nothing in America. The word legal, fact, evidence means nothing. It all depends on what they can spin in the focus groups, in the mainstream media, in the polls, to pull the wool over your eyes. Next, fired expert Chris Krebs admits in Senate hearing that Dominion voting machines is linked to the Internet. He admitted this. We'll be right back, folks. Welcome back, everybody, to hour number 2 of USAPrepares.com. And this is Rich Scheben sitting in for Vincent Finelli. And I am on InfoWars right now. Infowars.com, Alex Jones' website. And there's a really funny cartoon. It's titled Supreme Court Declines to Hear the Election Challenge. And they've got three donkeys that's behind the Supreme Court bench. Then they got a picture of, this is a cartoon, of Justice Alito and Thomas. And then in the middle is 4 chickens. That's right. It's amazing how accurate memes could be. Okay, I'm going to go back to more news, only because I'm running out of time. Next article. Rand Paul says, Dems stole election using COVID as an excuse to change laws. Yeah, I think we've talked about that about 100 times, right? Next, Michigan Democrat Secretary of State Benson refuses to testify before legislative oversight committee. See, when you are afraid, or you refuse, or you're blackmailed, or you're bribed, or you're threatened to testify, or to look at evidence, to look at facts, objective facts, to listen to whistleblowers and whistleblowers who have signed affidavits, meaning that they're willing to go to prison if they lie. This is not America. This isn't America. This is a banana republic. There's no confidence in the system. Zero. You understand this number? Zero. Next, forensic audit reveals Dominion systems were designed to create systemic fraud. I think we've given hundreds of those examples. Next, fraud analysis counties that use Dominion machines shifted 2 to 3% of votes to Democrats. Next, forensic audit finds out that security log files were deleted from all Dominion machines to hide vote switching. Forensic audit finds. There's no evidence, though, folks. This is all Russian disinformation. It's a conspiracy theory. Next, Trump campaign attorney tells Senate committee over 42,000 people voted more than once in Nevada, and there's proof of this. Oh, no, sorry. Russian disinformation. Sorry. Next, more on Dominion voting machines. They could easily duplicate votes, and security threats were virtually ignored. This is what happens when you buy off the people at the top and sacrifice hundreds of millions of Americans' will of the people. And it's especially sad what they've done to the people in Georgia, Pennsylvania, in Wisconsin, in Michigan, in New Mexico, in Nevada, in Arizona. There's several, it's not just 4 to 6 states. It's probably 29 states had Dominion. This was a landslide, people. President Trump won in a landslide. America is now an official, bona fide fraud thanks to the welfare system of today's government. We've gotten to the point where this government system just breeds and incentivizes and grooms and cultivates and rewards all these bought and paid for departments and big corporations for the purpose of their own personal gain and greed and corruption. And it creates cowards and seditious traitors who only are self-serving and want to feather their own nest. This is why we always have to beware of when they call somebody an expert or official authority. The word public servant is now associated with being a sellout. It's an official joke. And what's happening because of this is people are getting away with lies. They're redefining all words, all laws, and this just enables. So you remember when I talk about this, when you stop demanding protection of rights and restitution under the rule of law for people who have been targeted and affected years ago, everything gets changed with precedence. This is why I say this stuff. And you're always, too many people, especially on the left, are falling for, quality, fairness, tolerance, and diversity. It means nothing. I've given thousands of examples. This show has given thousands of examples on how the money and the opportunity is shifting from the bottom 93% to the top 1 to 2%. I've given thousands of these examples. So we're just enabling the big and the corrupt, using groups and people against each other for the gain of the elite. That's it. Nothing is ever vetted ever again. We live in a world of lies and plausible deniability and excuse behaviors based on what group you're in. Fraud, control, permanent caste systems, corrupt government and corporations, propaganda over truth, fake transparency. Everything is going to be manufactured perception and hoaxes and fake and propaganda from here on out. Everything. Next article. Michigan attorney Matthew DePierno, Dominion CEO, did not tell the truth about sealed and locked ballots machines in Antrim County. I saw the photo. It wasn't even close to that, people. And they could easily duplicate votes, and security threats were ignored. You know, there's a hero in there, Melissa Cordone. There's a bunch of people. She basically debunked all these lies by the CEO. All theater. See, when people go up in front of a microphone and they have certain expert official authority, that doesn't mean anything. Well, you can go up there and lie and not give proof or evidence when they're saying that they need proof and evidence from us, and we're giving proof and evidence, but nothing's happening. All right. Next, Zuckerberg paid for election judges. He purchased the drop boxes contrary to state law. Zuckerberg paid local officials who boarded up the windows to the counting room. Zuckerberg money purchased the machines, Dominion and others. People, if we did 1/1,000,000th of what these gazillionaires get away with, we would never see the light of day for the rest of our lives. Next, explosive information. What Dr. Coomer told the board is that Dominion voting does not go back for recertification of software when threats to their code are discovered. More truth to the big lie that was the most secure election in history. Remember that quote? What a bunch of crapola. Next, Senator Larkin. 42,000 people, we talked about this already, in Nevada voted more than once. 1,500 dead. 19,000 didn't live in Nevada. 8,000 voted for non-existent addresses. 15,000 registered to a commercial address and 4,000 non-citizens. Have there been any prosecutions yet, Senator? Answer, no. See, people, we're so corrupt. There is zero confidence in the system. President Trump won in the biggest landslide in presidential history. And yet all this evidence, all these facts, all these affidavits, all these videos, all these photos, all the math impossibilities, the people that matter in the lawyers and the judges and the courts don't want to see it because they're corrupt themselves, because they're hiding their own crimes or they've been bribed and blackmailed. It's disgusting when you think of the 1 million-plus combat soldiers who gave their life at young ages for this country. You people, you lawyers, you judges, and you courts, you're disgusting. You have zero respect. Zero. Next, COVID vaccines in Australia are testing positive for HIV. Imagine my shock. This is due to the HIV insert in the virus itself. Remember who worked on HIV for decades? That's right, Fauci. That's right. Connecting these dots, people? Next, a fraud analyst has found a curious phenomenon he calls the Dominion effect. I wonder if it's like the Kavanaugh effect. It's a 3% shift from Republican to Democrat in counties that used Dominion, which is 29 states. That's a lot of counties, people. Next, another loss for Newsom at San Diego restaurants can now open. Given every opportunity, the state has provided the court with no evidence to justify the closures the judge ruled. See, people, we need to start asking for proven double-blind results, proven tests about masks, it's been proven from what I'm reading, 1% of people in restaurants and bars are getting COVID. 1%. This is a fascist communist insurrection takeover, and small businesses is on the agenda. And we've talked about this agenda numerous times in great detail and specificity. I don't have time to go through it now, but we've done this. Next, here's what we found in Nevada. Over 42,000 people voted more than once. There's a reason why I'm saying this more than once. How come this is not null and void, people? This is a joke. A fifth grader couldn't come up with a better plan to steal this election. It's so obvious. Boy, they think you're stupid. Wow! Especially in Michigan and Wisconsin and Minnesota and New Mexico and Georgia and Nevada and Arizona. Boy, they think you're dumb. They're literally taking your voting rights away from you in broad daylight. Next, revolving door. Governor Brian Kemp's former chief of staff, Jared Thomas, left Secretary of State's office and became paid lobbyist for Dominion Voting Systems, helping it land a $107 million contract to run the Georgia elections. Can you connect these dots, folks? Federal lobbyist disclosure revealed that one of the Dominion Voting System's top lobbyists in Washington is Nancy Pelosi's. Welcome back, people. Rich Scheben sitting in for Vincent Finelli, and I'm going to have to shortcutting my shortcuts again. Man, it's so hard to do because it's hard to not comment on some of these objective facts and evidence. It's amazing to me how the powers that be are purposely delegitimizing votes, polls, work, the rule of law, America. It's incredible to me on how people are putting up with this. We need everybody to stand up. Being an American is not a spectator sport right now, everybody. We all have to read, research, use objective facts, and stand up for the rule of law, because too many people sacrificed their life for our birthright and freedoms. I don't know if you heard the last thing before the break, because the music came in. Federal lobbyist disclosure records reveal that one of Dominion Voting System's top lobbyists in Washington is Nancy Pelosi's former chief of staff, Nadeem El-Shami. Are you connecting the dots with the revolving doors, folks? Do you see how things are going? See how a lot of these people are related? Do you see how they pickpocket each other's pocket and move it into the next person's pocket? And they are the beneficiaries, and the people who are affected are we the people. Next, 3 million people properly voted in the state of Wisconsin. More than 200,000 identified during this recount, But those votes got counted still. Our statute says they should not have been. That means the law says they should not have been. That's 200,000 votes, people, that in our view is a taint on our election in Wisconsin. And this is said from Attorney James Trupis. 5% of attorneys and judges are good. 95% are bought and paid for and blackmailed. That's the way I see it. Next, AMA rescinds previous statement that hydroxychloroquine, HCQ, used for the early treatment of COVID-19, people died that could have been saved by a cheap 60-year-old drug, which is ACQ, which has minimal side effects. And we're going to find out that ivermectin, remember we said this a few weeks ago, is going to be similar. This means that the powers that be who wanted to jab you with these so-called mRNA vaccines, which we've talked about, remember? They reprogram your cells, they compromise your immune system. People are calling them a bioweapon. Bill Gates that admits mRNA vaccines are experimental will change your DNA forever, and they're calling it safe and effective, even though there's a vaccine compensation program that's been paid out to vaccine injuries over $4 billion. You remember all this, right? So if indeed 300,000 people died of COVID-19, that means the AMA, the FDA, the World Health Organization, all these lettered organizations, all these acronyms, they should be sued. If the AMA has rescinded their previous statement about HCQ, they should be sued for 300,000 deaths. People should be in jail in these blue Democrat states who threw tens of thousands of people into infected nursing homes for the purpose of getting their numbers up. These people should be in jail, and these states should be sued, and including you have to remember, folks, hospitals get incentives for people being put on vents, for people being admitted as COVID-19. It's a joke. Next, historic and unparalleled. Pennsylvania, Georgia, Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, Nevada, New Mexico all had GOP electors cast votes for Donald Trump that preserves his right to remedy fraud with his own electors. Very important. People are seeing through the fraud. State legislatures, stand up. Welcome back, everybody. Rich Scheben, broadcasting from Northwest Montana. And I'm just going to go into more information, more quotes, more objective facts, more evidence. And I'm not going to get to a lot of stuff, but I'm just going to keep ripping out more information for you. Next, quote, look at this evidence. It's shocking. The signatures are nowhere near matching. They look like they were done completely by someone else. Only 2,000 plus signatures, a little over 2,000, were rejected out of over 1.3 million votes in the Georgia November election. How much evidence have we given just on this show regarding the election fraud in Georgia? And only 2,000 signatures, 2,011 to be exact, were rejected out of 1.3 plus million. It's legal votes, people, not all votes. My goodness, wow. Wow, is America corrupt. Wow. Next, U.S. National Hospital Bed Utilization Update on 12/15 shows COVID-19 is not overwhelming. General inpatient or ICU bed capacities. Total hospital beds at 74% capacity. 15.9% of them with COVID patients. ICU beds at 63.9%. Don't listen to the propaganda, people. Do your own reading and research. Next. Study. Dominion machine shifted 2 to 3% of Trump votes to Biden. Far more votes than needed to sway the election, including Florida, Ohio, and Texas, and many other states were won by even greater margins than projected. This is not just a swing state phenomenon. And this study was from OAN, a very credible news network. Next, how error-laden these Dominion machines are. You'd expect maybe 5% or 1% on the high end. And the law states less than 1%, by the way. In Antrim County, Michigan, 68% of votes revealed error rates. 68%. In Nevada, it was 70%. America, this election is null and void. It's a scam. It's a sham. This is what happens when you lower the bars of standard standards and expectations for a job. It metastasizes like a cancer. Next. Today we reveal our report painting a clear picture of a cabal of billionaires using their wealth to subvert, control, and fundamentally alter the electoral system itself. We must act now to prevent such privatized elections in the future like Zuckerberg. Don't forget, in October, Facebook and Twitter blocked users from sharing the New York Post article exposed the truth of Hunter Biden. This is why 92% of Republican voters think the election was fixed. Well, listen, I'm not in that group. I'm not in that 92% of voters that think the election was fixed. Because I know the election was fixed. Because I've given evidence. I've given facts. I've read the whistleblowers. I've read the affidavits. I know the election was rigged. Next, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, a rhino out of Kentucky, quashed 2 election integrity bills in July last year after receiving thousands in donations from Dominion lobbyists. People, can you connect the dots with these revolving doors and corruption? And from what I'm reading, McConnell's wife has a direct connection to Chairman Xi in China. People. In July, McConnell blocked these 2 bills that would provide $775 million to bolster election security, along with requiring a physical paper trail of every single ballot in the country. Wouldn't that have really helped, don't you think? And it would also mandate political candidates, their staff members, and their family to notify the FBI. I don't know if the FBI does any good because it's been proven they're bought and paid for, if any foreign government offered to assist them. And McConnell, why do you think he's urging Republicans right now not to object to a Biden electoral votes? Because he's bought and paid for. All this, big money going against McConnell for the election, it was theater. He sold you out, America, especially Kentucky. You're sold out. Next, all mail ballots in Clark County were counted first by running them through a digital scanner. If the scanner cannot read the ballot or determine the voter's intent, the ballot is sent to the adjudication team. You remember that? So county officials can, if it's partisan, if they're bought and paid for, if they're blackmail people, 70% of the ballots were reviewed by quote-unquote election officials. That's right, air quotes. Next, the error rate scanning ballots in Antrim County, Michigan was 68%. Clark County, Nevada, 70% of the ballots. People, this is a fraud. It's a scam. This election is null and void. And did you hear about the video from Patrick Byrne? He's been on a lot of the alternative media. He was very brave to come forth. I haven't verified if this is true, but it's called Operation Snow Globe. He claims he was complicit in facilitating a bribe for Hillary Clinton in the amount of $18 million on behalf of the FBI in January of 2016. The bribe, which she accepted, by the way, was then going to be used by members of the Obama administration against Hillary after she was elected. That's code for Barack Obama had leverage on Hillary to control her from his basement. That's what Operation Snow. We are so corrupt, people. We should apologize for Russia. Everything's Russia, Russia, Russia. Russia disinformation. Russia this, Russia. We should apologize. I mean, Russia doesn't even have a GDP of Texas, for crying out loud. It's China, China, China. Next, our government in Washington State is spending over $72 million on illegal aliens, while the small businesses in Washington are going under. Well, look, they think you're stupid in Washington, too. Next, here's the forensic audit report of the Dominion voting machines in Michigan. In one county where 33% of the vote was switched electronically from President Trump to Biden. People, come on. It's getting to the point where it's absolutely being ridiculous. Here's a good article, and man, I got so little time. It's titled An Inconvenient Truth About COVID-19 Conspiracy by Chris Black. And he's talking about, well, people are dying, but people are dying from other things too, because remember the study from Johns Hopkins? There's no increase in death rates. But keep in mind, flu doesn't exist anymore. Nothing exists anymore. Pneumonia doesn't exist anymore. It's all thrown into the COVID-19, and the hospitals are not overwhelming. He gives a statistic here where 80 to 95 capacity is normal, especially for this times of year. Remember all the tents in New York City and all the ships that were created? Hardly anybody showed up. PCR tests are between 93 to 97% inaccurate and give false positives. I'm not going to have time to go through all this. Next article, Michigan witness Melissa Corona. She's a hero, people, with the other thousands of other heroes that have come forth. And basically said that Dominion CEO, this John Poulos guy, lied to the Michigan Senate, and she has the proof. And she goes through all this stuff. Oh, there's so much. I don't have the time, but there's so much information here. You need to read that article. Next article. It's unbelievable that they were saying, Dominion, the CEO, was saying at the Michigan hearing that he's never used solar winds. We've talked about this several times. And you're going to laugh. You're going to laugh. They didn't even remove the Solar Winds logo from their website regarding its source code. It's on there. You can't get more stupid and more of a liar than that. So all these forensic Dominion voting system forensic audits, it's concluding that these machines were deliberately designed to alter votes through artificially high error rates and manual adjudication, quote-unquote, fixing of ballots. And they were set at as high of an error rate in Antrim County of 68%, 70% in Clark County, Nevada. I mean, this is a joke. Mitch McConnell is going full rhino on regarding everything from Dominion to the fake election. I mean, come on, people. 200,000 votes in Wisconsin that should be thrown out. There's so many facts. I can't even discuss them all. I just don't have the time. So I'm going to go to more news and information in my last few minutes I have left. And I'm going to whip out as much as I can. I'm going to try to hold back for comments. Next, Ontario health official hot microphone. Quote, I just say whatever they write down for me. Unquote. People, it has nothing to do with what expert you are, official authority you are. It means nothing. It all depends on, are they paid off and are they blackmailed? That is it. Because nothing matters. Nothing is real. Nothing's authentic. There is no confidence in this system. It's for the Great Reset. It's for the management, the control, and the power and the money addictions of the elite towards the people. And the World Economic Forum, you remember them. They want you to eat bugs and eat weeds. You remember those. Remember Schwab? I did an article on that a few days ago. Remember that? Well, they want government, the central banks, and big corporations to help vaccinate the world. That's right. with nanotechnology, where there's a 90% effective rate for a 99.7% recovery rate. Do the math, people. I'll be right back with the last segment after this break. Thank you for being here. All right, everybody, last segment. Appreciate you being here. Boy, the time goes fast, and I cannot get enough information out, so I'm just going to rip as much as I can out before the end of the show. We really appreciate you being here. We hope you take this information, verify it, read and research, think for yourself, shut off your television, and we all need to be Americans right now. Silent majority, no more. Next, Pentagon orders emergency shutdown of classified network. This has never happened before. This could be because of the blackout. This could be because of the SolarWinds hacking. You know, there's so much corruption at the top, you just can't even trust any information that comes from government anymore. Next, OC Sheriff. I think it's Colorado. I read all these articles, and I can't remember because I had so many prepared for the show, but the sheriff refused to release 1,800 dangerous inmates, including murderers and child molesters, after judge's order. See, we need courage. You need to find out who the sheriff is, and if I had more time, I apologize, Sheriff, if you're listening. Your name should be mentioned. You're a hero. It has nothing to do with judges' orders. It has everything to do with vetting the right people to be out in society. That's what it's about. Next, study. Vaccinated children significantly less healthy than unvaccinated children. I think everybody knows that. Next, former Overstock CEO. The Chinese are using COVID-19 to take us out. Plenty of evidence on that. Next, featured nurses say, just say no to COVID shot. Next, 87,000 nurses refused COVID vaccines in the Netherlands. And again, people, as my disclaimer, I try and say every show, these are all published articles in the public domain. I do not make up any of this. Next, Bill Gates denies ever talking about digital vaccine passports, but yet there's video proof that he did. You can't make this stuff up. You know, Bill Gates, the guy who's talking about how we need major depopulation to occur. You know, the big proponent of vaccines, that guy. Yeah. Next, a record 61% of restaurants, 35% of small businesses can't pay December rent. This is what happens when you lock down the economy and stop commerce. Next, science and tech. Fauci wants you to cancel Christmas. That's right. This guy Fauci wants you to accept canceling Christmas. Think about that. Next, Twitter to censor vaccine information. No, they want to censor the truth. They want to censor the agenda that we talk about many, many times. Depopulation, free speech, forced vaccines, forced lockdowns, destroying your immune system with 5G towers, forced austerity, crashing the economy, delegitimizing work, getting rid of cash, stopping patriotism and peaceful assembly. You know, that agenda. Next, 40% of COVID deaths in Grand County have a comorbidity of gunshot wounds. This is in Colorado. You can't make this stuff up, folks. I would make a joke about this, but I shouldn't make a joke about people getting shot. Next, Rhode Island governor caught at wine event days after telling the citizens to stay at home. How many hundreds, the Pelosi's, the Gavin Newsoms, the Denver mayors, how many hundreds of reports have we given on this show regarding hypocrisy and double standards? You can tell they're really concerned about COVID, folks. Really concerned. Next, featured fake shot. Local news airs a healthcare worker receiving an empty vaccination. The syringe was pushed forward. It was all fake. And I read this, and I can't remember what state it was from. I can't, pardon me, but it's all phony. Everything is an act. It's all theater. All of it. Next, Texas and 9 other states joined the Justice Department and sue Google. Now, I want to remind people, I admit this is a virus, but it's 1% virus, 99% agenda to destroy the will of the people and make us submissive, to ruin our joy, ruin our life, ruin our future. Next, when 2-year-olds are thrown off of airplanes, you know America has changed. Yeah, it's called authoritarian communist insurrection tyranny. Dictatorships. Next, Gorka says Bill Barr isn't deep state, he's simply a coward. Absolutely. Mitch McConnell, sister-in-law, is directly connected to Xi and ties bank to China. FBI, CISA, Office of D&I release statement on pursuing significant cybersecurity incident with SolarWinds Orion products. Next, Hunter Biden, James Biden, former top DOJ leaders and a China billionaire held a last-minute meeting in 2017 with New York Governor Cuomo. What's going on there, folks? Treason, sedition, espionage? We appreciate you being here. Everybody have a great Thursday.